Hi.
Hardwired to meet up where we clap before you even say anything.
I know, now the expectations have been raised. So thank you everyone for coming and listening to these talks. And the last two presentations were great, so hope to keep it going. So my name is Arthur Shmulevsky, and I'm the president and co-founder of CleanCube. About 4 years ago, I had a problem. I lived in a big pre-war building with dry cleaners on 3 of the 4 sides of the building. And I would leave for work early enough in the morning that the dry cleaners were closed, and I'd come home late enough that they were closed. And inevitably, it'd be 1 a.m., I'd be in my basement on a Tuesday night washing my last pair of socks for work the next day. I'm sure a lot of people have had that experience. It was very frustrating. And I realized that I had a lot of other problems with my busy schedule and convenience. I was missing packages. I was sending my packages to my office and then schlepping them home. I tried to order from an online grocery, and I had to suffer through the 4-hour delivery window. And so what I realized I had was the problem of the last mile for on-demand. So I was an on-demand early adapter, but I couldn't figure out how to solve the problem of the last mile. And so that's where the idea where CleanCube was born. And so this is how we solved the problem of the last mile for on-demand. So CleanCube is an agnostic physical platform that sits inside a residential commercial building and acts as a last mile solution for the on-demand economy. So here I'm going to show you a few installations that we have across the city. We're in 33 buildings as of today with 15 property owners. And basically, they're Lego modular pieces, Lego-like modular pieces that can fit into any building size. Excuse me. So the services we're currently offering are package delivery, wash and fold and dry cleaning, mini storage, Goodwill donations, but we hope to keep expanding our services. Grocery delivery is a big thing that we're trying to do, cobbler, tailor, and other things that are tangentially related, such as house cleaning services. Basically what we want to be is a storefront inside of a building before a tenant hits the front door, a service provider and a storefront. So we launched about 2.5 years ago. September 2012 was our launch. It took about 7 to 8 months for us to build out the technology to beta in the first building. Our first building was in Harlem. It took about 7 or 8 months to get the technology to be stable and scalable. So by January 2014, we were in a grand total of 4 buildings. And having gone through this arduous and challenging process over the last year, we've expanded to 33 buildings. And so I want to share the lessons learned that we've had. You know, they say that experience is the worst teacher, because first you have to have the experience and learn the painful lesson, and then you learn the painful lesson. So with that being said, I'm going to share the lessons that we've learned along the way. So the first lesson that we learned, and I think the most important, is to constantly challenge your assumptions from the very beginning. So when we started, we knew that in order to survive, in order to be able to pivot, we had to define our assumptions. What do we think we can prove? And what are we trying to prove, and how can we make this so that we have, definitive benchmarks that our assumptions are being challenged and that we're following through. So the first assumption that we had is that we could develop the technology on a proof of concept budget. So we had raised $390,000, and so we assumed that we could develop the technology. Our second assumption was that we would get buy-in from property owners, so that once we developed the technology, property owners would see the value of having a CleanCube installed in their building. They would see this as an amenity that they can offer their tenants as a way to raise rent. And so that was the second assumption we had. The next assumption we had is that if we got into the buildings, that tenants would be using us. The tenants would see the pain point, that they would adapt to a change in their habits, and that they would see the value of using CleanCube in their building. And the final assumption that we had, obviously we had more assumptions than these, but these are the main ones that we laid out, was that the tenants that were using us were spending enough money to make this capital expenditure worthwhile. So I'm going to take you through all 4 of these assumptions and how we verified them and what we did and how we pivoted when the assumptions didn't really, when they were challenged. So here are the challenges, constraints, and lessons learned for technology development. So on my first day of speaking with my developer, he sat me down, and I'm sure that a lot of you have had this experience where they try to temper expectations right from the beginning. And he said, you can have development price, development speed, and development quality. You can choose 2 right now. So if you want me to make this fast with high quality, it's going to be really expensive. So I started shaking my head. So for us, for my company, price was something that we needed to have. We had a budget, we were bootstrapping, we needed to make it affordable. So we sacrificed on speed. Quality couldn't be sacrificed. So this was a huge lesson learned for me right from the first day, where 2 of these 3. So if you raise a big budget, you're sacrificing the price. And that's obviously the easiest way of doing it. For a lot of people, it's between speed and quality. And you guys can make your own choice as to which one is more important. I would recommend not sacrificing on quality. So the next challenge that we had in our technology development was the aesthetic of the UI. So we have a touch screen that sits in the lobby of the building. And similar to normal, this is kind of a part of our brand, you know, the beautiful storefront you have here. So we're like that storefront in the building, and that UI is the kind of the shiny, bright thing in the lobby that each tenant sees twice a day when they leave and when they come back. So it was really, really important that it represented our brand, and that it was something that was catching. We know that there's a direct correlation between a simple user experience and customer acquisition and customer retention. So the lesson that we learned from that is simplicity is key. So we really were trying to hone in on what's the fastest, most stable user experience. And we were inspired by Dieter Rams and his 10 principles of good design as we were making it. I brought a sample, so after this, we'll show you what we designed. And so it was very important that we honed in on simplicity. Also, we didn't want to put anything negative on the UI. So in the first version, we had a news ticker, and then it showed a couple earthquakes and a plane crash, and we decided to take that out because no one wants to see that. So the next challenge, and this was probably one of our largest challenges from the technology side, was designing the cubes themselves. So we need to design something that was stable, meaning that when a tenant presses the button on the touch screen, it pops that cube open. It was super important that it worked every single time. If that cube doesn't pop open, people aren't going to have the confidence that we're going to be able to return their stuff, that they're going to be able to get their stuff out, and that their stuff is secure. So because we handle valuables and stuff that is important to people, such as their dry cleaning, there's a trust that we need to establish with the consumer. When they give us something of theirs, they expect it back. Scalability was the second thing that we really needed to focus on. It needed to fit into any lobby size. Obviously, in a big lobby, we had more room to play with, but we want this to be ubiquitous across the city, in thousands of locations all around the city. And to do that, we really needed to make a product that would fit into all lobby sizes. And the next thing is affordability. We needed to make a product that after it was designed, that the CapEx would pay itself back in a reasonable period of time. And so the lesson learned from that, one of the main lessons we learned was you have to sometimes sacrifice on your design. I'll show you what I mean by that, because that's a little bit of a head scratcher. So here's the first version of the prototype that came. So this came right from the factory. It arrived about February 2013. And then when it came in, and then the fabricator sent me a bill, I was shocked. I mean, I had huge sticker shock. It was like, I thought we were dead in the water at that point. And I called him up and I said, this isn't what we had discussed. This is way more expensive. And he said, well, your design showed rounded corners, and rounded corners are 40% of the cost because it's a manual process. So you can see like a little design element from our designer of rounded corners, when it goes time to manufacture at scale, can add a huge cost to it. So we went back to the drawing board, and here's version 2. So version 2 is a series of columns. So you can see 3 separate columns attached as one piece. And this got us into about 4 or 5 buildings with large lobbies. But then we were asked to go into a building in the West Village. It was a prime location for us, large building, pretty small lobby. But when I got there, I was disheartened because the lobby was completely brick. So there was nowhere to put Clean Cube. There was a little bit of a dead space under the stairs. But there was nothing we can do to squeeze a column under there. So we actually had to take a bank of columns back to a fabricator and lop the top off and try to squeeze them under the stairs. And again, it turned out that what we had thought was a scalable product was not scalable. So we went back to the drawing board again, and we came up with the current version, which is what we have in our buildings. And this version is completely Lego-like, modular. It's plug and play into the center touchscreen component. And with this, we can fit into basically any building size. So that was a huge benefit for us, and it was a multiple-step learning process for us to figure out to get the scalability and affordability down to make it work. So the next assumption that we made is that we would get buy-in from the property owners. And so the challenges and constraints from there is that, well, lobbies have been the same for thousands of years. There's probably a cave somewhere where the lobby technology is the same as most of the buildings in this neighborhood's lobby technology. So, you know, it's 1,000-year-old, you know, you have a door, you have a left, right, up, down, but in terms of technology, it's pretty standard. And so, you know, we're trying to show that the same way that 30 years ago, a car was a stick shift and dials, and now it's a computer on wheels. That was what we were trying to do to building lobbies, and that's what we're trying to show to the property owners. Another thing is it's a very old school industry. So, you know, I did not previously have real estate background. So to switch into the real estate industry, you found out that in a lot of these buildings, the mortgage is paid off, they're collecting the money from the rent rolls, so they're not really incentivized to take risks. No one wanted to be the first one to do it, so we really had a legitimacy barrier as we were growing the company in the very beginning to have one property owner say that they wanted to do it. And then the second thing is they're not really incentivized to do it. So, you know, again, they're not the ones that are doing the managing. They're not the ones, usually the property owners aren't the ones doing the managing or the brokerage. So for them, unless someone is pushing it on them, they just collect the rent. And there's a 99% occupancy rate in New York right now. So really, they know they're going to fill the apartment regardless. So we had to break these barriers. And so the way that we broke it, and the first one is a profit share. It's a no-brainer. You know, here is a dead space that they're not monetizing. We offered to give them a profit share for this dead space, and that was how we got the first few yeses. You know, clearly money talks, and that was the thing that they most cared about. The second thing that helped us, and a lesson learned, is influencers matter. So we didn't have any real estate experience in the beginning. We were talking with people that did, and people that influenced the property owners. So what that is, the brokers, the developers, the architects, the security system installers, the property management teams. All of these people have the ear of the owners, the final decision makers. And for them, for a broker to go to a property owner and say, I'll be able to rent this apartment faster, or I'll be able to raise the rent in this building if you have this technology in your lobby, if you add these amenities in your lobby, was invaluable. And the third thing lesson that we learned is to leverage our brand. And I think that the previous two companies spoke a little bit about this, but when we first started, our branding was all over the place. We didn't really have a good concept of branding. So our print was different than our website, was different than the cubes. And so once we streamlined our branding and really went with one theme, which ours is Art Deco, it really gave us a legitimacy, and it went from us looking like a mom and pop shop when we met with property owners to looking like a legitimate company. So some people love our branding, some people like it less, but throughout it, it's concise, it's consistent, and that's very, very important when you're designing a product or service that you're going to sell. So the next assumption that I want to talk about is the end user buy-in, that tenants would use us when we got into the buildings. So again, it was similar to the challenges that the property owners had. It's an unknown product. Old habits die hard. A lot of tenants didn't even know that this was a pain point. This is how they've been doing it for the last 30 years. Why change? You know, I'll leave work early to do my laundry dry cleaning. I'll send my package to the office. Who knows that there's something else? So this is Everett Rogers Innovation Adaptation Bell Curve. And what it shows is that if you get past it says that 2.5% of people are going to use you regardless. They're the early adapters. I think Carlos said that he was an early adapter. He was somebody that uses things all the time when it first come out. And I try to be one as well. I think a lot of people in the tech community love technology and want to test technology out. But it's important to get past, innovators. That's the first 2.5%. But it's important to get past the early adapters, which is the next 13.5%. So you really want to get past that 16% to hit that inflection point and really start to get into that early majority area. So it's really, really important to get past the early adapters. And so the way that we did that is we had to understand that what we intuitively know about the technology and how seamless it is and how easy it is, well, that's because we've been working in the company and making it for the last year or 2 years or however long. A tenant that's in a building and sees this has no idea what this is. So we had to make sure that we did a demo. We do a wine and cheese event in the lobby when we launch. and through that wine and cheese event, we demo the technology. The next thing is we offer about $20 to $30 of free services, free laundry and dry cleaning, free package delivery. We just launched a Prime service, so we offer a month of free package delivery and mini storage. The next thing we did is partner with the property owner. So we leveraged our relationship with the property owners to gain legitimacy. So all the marketing, the email blasts, they come from the property owners. We're allowed to advertise inside the buildings. And knowing that we're not a vending machine in the lobby, part of the building, is hugely important for people to give us that trust to try this out. And the next thing is to add value. And what I mean by that is there are people that are never going to use us for laundry dry cleaning, that don't need to worry about package delivery. But as we keep adding services, whether that's grocery delivery, or cobbler, tailor, hopefully we'll find a service as an agnostic platform that people are going to start using, and so we're going to monetize that. And the final one, which is the most important, is a quality user experience. So we have a service that we're offering, which means that we have reoccurring customers. So it's extremely important that we prioritize customer service. Doesn't matter how nice and shiny the hardware is and how well it works. If a person has a bad customer experience, they're not going to use us again. So it's really important that we don't have that name brand recognition of AT&T or say Time Warner. We're the necessary evil, where we're more convenient, but everyone hates using us because our customer service sucks. So we don't nickel and dime our customers. When we go into a building, we make sure that regardless of what happens, that they're happy with the customer service experience. We really prioritize that, and that's a huge lesson learned for us, that you have to make sure that you're customer focused all the way through. And the last assumption that we needed to verify was that we were going to make money from the people that use us. So currently our business model is set up where we put the CapEx and we put the hardware in the building for free to the property owners, and we make money off of the services we provide. We think that we're going to hit a point where we can start charging the property owners, but until then, we needed to make sure that the investment was worthwhile. So we did surveys to see what the average expenditure was in laundry and dry cleaning, and also we looked at price elasticity. You know, one of the big lessons that we learned is the surveys that we did were fairly accurate. We surveyed a lot of people online, walking around asking, and the average person was spending between $70 and $80 a month on laundry and dry cleaning a month, and we've actually hit that for the last year consistently. So that was a very positive lesson, is that surveys were actually very valuable, and we were questioning that before we launched the survey. Another thing is that reoccurring revenue is much more valuable than one-off revenue. So our Prime service is an example of that. It's a lot easier to manage cash flows when you know what your reoccurring revenue is. And the final one is optimal pricing and price elasticity. So we were very worried about how elastic the pricing of laundry and dry cleaning was going to be. But we decided to test in a building, and we raised the price by 15% from $1 to $1.15 a pound for wash and fold. And we found out that not that many people left. So pricing is a huge component in revenue. It's the other side of the how many people are using you. And so we realized that for laundry dry cleaning, it was inelastic, and that was a huge lesson that we learned from this. So I want to say thank you for letting me speak, and also challenge your assumptions. That's the main thing I want to say. Thank you.
All right, so we've been over time, so we have time for either one long question or two short ones.
Sure.
I'm having the impression that people are going to share the cube. Is there any security and privacy concerns?
So you asked if people share the cubes.
Yeah.
So the bank of cubes are shared by the tenants, but you never open one that has something inside. So when a tenant drops something off, that cube is unavailable until the service provider comes and empties that cube. And we did a lot of testing on security. I mean, you would have to come at it with a crowbar to destroy it.
All right, one more.
Sure.
Do you have a back-end system like what you do?
So the question is whether we have a back-end system. We developed a whole CRM and ERP system to monetize it and to make it scalable and to be able to license this technology all around the world. And that's another huge component of what we're trying to do. The back-end system is run off QR codes, so we know when something goes into a cube in real time. We have drivers that are being sent to the correct locations at the right time. So from a logistics standpoint, it's a lot easier to have the service layer of CleanCube in your building because because as opposed to an on-demand company, when somebody presses a button, we don't need to immediately send somebody. So for the tenant side, on an on-demand system, they can go downstairs and just drop it off immediately. So it's even faster than waiting for that service window. But from our perspective, we know when things are being dropped off, so we just follow our routes. And so our ERP and CRM system is very robust and is able to handle thousands of buildings probably. So thanks for the question.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.